Oh yeah, watch.
And unconvincing witness. The presiding judge began the court session by harshly condemning the prosecuting lawyer for presenting a false witness in the previous session, emphasizing the importance of truth in the justice system. The prosecuting lawyer accepted full responsibility, apologized, and promised to revise his vetting procedures for witnesses moving forward. Despite the previous misstep, the prosecutor sought to introduce a new key witness, a Nigerian police officer, claiming he had crucial information against the defendant, Simon Ekpa. Simon Ekpa, a trained lawyer himself, asked to cross-examine the witness before any formal testimony, arguing the need to verify the authenticity of the witness due to prior issues with credibility. During cross-examination, Simon Ekpa exposed inconsistencies in the witness identification, an outdated ID card, lack of a current warrant card, and failure to meet standard police identification procedures. Seizing on the doubts raised, Simon Ekpa's lawyer accused the prosecution of repeatedly failing to properly vet witnesses and requested the judge suspend any further witness presentations by the prosecution. The judge demanded clarification on the verification process used for the witness and warned the prosecuting team that future lapses in witness credibility would result in suspension from the case. The prosecutor claimed he had relied on Nigerian authorities for witness selection and promised more rigorous checks moving forward, trying to shift some blame to Nigerian officials. Despite the earlier credibility issues, the witness testified that Simon Ekpa's social media posts incited villagers in Nigeria to protest and attack government property, citing interviews and evidence gathered. Despite the witness testimony, the major damage to his credibility and the prosecution's repeated errors led to visible relief and joy on Simon Ekpa's side, indicating strong courtroom momentum in his favor. In court, Simon Ekpa's lawyer exposed flaws in the testimony of a police officer, revealing that the officer was not a social media expert, lacked direct evidence of incitement, had no recordings of key witness interviews, and admitted that villagers might have acted on pre-existing grievances rather than Simon Ekpa's social media post. The police officer acknowledged that Simon Ekpa was not present at the scene, did not directly instruct violence, and that merely sharing and discussing posts isn't criminal. The officer could not prove coordination or incitement beyond speculative interpretation. The presiding judge reprimanded the prosecution for bringing unprepared and unconvincing witnesses to court, indicating that the case against Simon Ekpa might be weak and suggesting that Simon Ekpa could be innocent. Simon Ekpa's second courtroom win sparked emotional reactions and tears of joy from supporters. The public and media are eagerly awaiting the next session, which is expected to be one of the most crucial hearings in the case. It was a chilly morning in Finland, the kind where breath floats visibly in the air and the sun hangs low in the sky. But inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation, tension, and unspoken questions. For Simon Njoku Ekpa, a trained lawyer, political activist, and controversial figure of Nigerian origin, this was not just another court appearance. It was a defining moment. The courtroom was packed, not just with legal professionals and journalists, but with supporters, curious onlookers, and members of the Nigerian diaspora in Finland who had followed the case from its earliest days. The heavy doors of the courtroom had barely closed when the presiding judge addressed the court with a stern, unwavering voice that cut through the silence like a blade. Right from the beginning, the judge did not mince words. With a measured tone filled with restrained anger, the judge directed his comments toward the prosecuting lawyer. The judge criticized him for what he called a disgraceful violation of the justice system, the presentation of a false witness in the previous court session. This was not merely a procedural error, it was a breach of ethical and legal expectations, and it struck at the very heart of what the court stands for. The judge reminded everyone in the room, in no uncertain terms, that truth must form the foundation of every legal process. Justice, he said, could never flourish in an environment polluted with dishonesty. The prosecuting lawyer, visibly shaken and perhaps overwhelmed by the judge's direct condemnation, did not try to defend his previous actions. He stood with bowed head and admitted his fault. He accepted full responsibility for the mishap, apologized to the court, and gave his word that his future witness vetting procedures would be more thorough and transparent. There was a somberness in his voice, a recognition that the court had lost a measure of confidence in his ability to present credible evidence. But even after acknowledging his error, the prosecuting lawyer surprised the court by requesting to introduce a new key witness. This new witness, the prosecution claimed, was a police officer from the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The prosecutor described him as someone who had critical information concerning the case against Simon Nyoku Ekpa. According to the prosecutor, this officer could draw a connection between Simon Nyoku Ekpa's social media activities and acts of civil unrest in Nigeria. The weight of this claim was immense. If true, it could turn the tide of the case. But given the damage already done to the prosecution's credibility, the courtroom responded with skepticism rather than curiosity. Simon Nyoku Ekpa, who had remained calm throughout the judge's remarks and the prosecutor's apology, stood up and made a request. He asked the court for the opportunity to cross-examine the proposed witness before any formal testimony was accepted into the record. As a trained lawyer himself, Simon Nyoku Ekpa argued that it was essential to verify the authenticity of this new witness, especially in light of the previous incident involving a false witness. His argument was rooted in logic. If the court could be misled once, it must take extra care to avoid being misled again. The judge allowed the cross-examination to proceed, and what followed was a methodical and at times uncomfortable unraveling of the prosecution's case. Under questioning, the witness, the Nigerian police officer, presented an outdated identification card. He had no current warrant card to prove his active status in the Nigerian police force. When asked about the proper procedures for verifying his identity and qualifications, he gave responses that were inconsistent and vague. The courtroom grew more restless with each passing minute. It was becoming clear that this so-called key witness was not prepared to meet the rigorous standards of international legal proceedings. Simon Nyoku Ekpa, seizing on the growing doubt in the room, continued to question the witness with precision and restraint. He focused not only on the witness's questionable credentials, but also on the larger implications of the prosecution's methods. Was it a mere oversight, or was there something more troubling beneath the surface? A pattern of negligence, perhaps even intentional misdirection. Sensing that the tide had turned, Simon Nyoku Ekpa's legal team rose and addressed the court. They accused the prosecution of systematically failing to vet its witnesses. This was not a one-time mistake, they argued. This was a pattern that undermined the very integrity of the case. Given this, they asked the judge to suspend any further witness presentations by the prosecution.
You don't see him, and they have had. Yes.